Hello everyone, welcome to the new video of Clinical Research Sport. Today we are going to be discussed about the basics of clinical research. So let's discuss about what is clinical research or what is clinical trial. Clinical research or clinical trial, it is a medical research which involving people. It studies new tests and treatments and evaluate their effects on human health outcome. Basically, the clinical trials are conducting to test the safety and efficacy of new medications with different combinations, new uses of existing medication, that is the study of new medicine in different disease condition and medical devices, etc. So basically, to test the safety and efficacy of these things, we are conducting the clinical trial activities. So why clinical trials are needed or why it is required? It is to determine if a new form of treatment or prevention, such as any new drugs, diet, or any medical devices, which is safe and which is effective in people, it is doing to test the ways to diagnose a disease which is early, sometimes before any symptoms are present we can diagnose the disease condition. So to confirm that, finding approaches to prevent the health problem including the people who are healthy but at increased risk of developing disease conditions, to improve the quality of life for the people living with life threatening disease condition or who have any chronic health problem, new ways to use existing treatments, for identification of new combinations of drugs, for the identification of new surgery method, and for the radiations therapies. For these kind of the things we are mainly conducting the clinical trial activities. So now let's see that who is participating in this research. Of course, humans are participating in the clinical trial. Always remember, it's not an animal study. There is no animals involved in the study. It's purely a human study. So we can divide these humans into two types. That is patients and healthy volunteers. The patients, as you know, that who have any disease condition in which we are studying, and healthy volunteers, that means the one who don't have any disease conditions, who is healthy. So like that, two type of the participants are involved in the clinical trial. So that's according to the phases of the clinical trial in which where the healthy and patients are participating, that we will discuss during the phases of the clinical trial. So generally these participants which is involved in the clinical trial, now we give a term which we are using in the clinical trial, that is known as subjects. So the participants involved in the clinical trial which is known as subjects. So it is not like that everyone can participate in the clinical trial. That means every patients or every healthy volunteers, they cannot participate in the clinical trial. We will select some persons to be participate in the clinical trial. That is, there is a standard which is outlining, which is deciding that who can participate in the clinical trial. So that's that particular standard which is known as eligibility criteria or inclusion and exclusion criteria. So these inclusion exclusion criteria or the eligibility criteria which is listed in the clinical trial protocol. For conducting every clinical trial, there will be an approved protocol. It will be different for every study. So in that particular protocol, it will be mentioned for selecting someone for selecting the subject, what is the eligibility criteria that will be clearly stated in the protocol. So based on that eligibility criteria only, the subjects are selecting to participate in the clinical trial. So where the trials are conducting? Of course, it's conducting in hospitals like the government or private hospitals, medical colleges, where usually these clinical trials are conducting. And these places, these centers where the trials are conducting, which is known as site, SITE, site in clinical trial. So subject is the one who is participating in the clinical trial and the studies are conducting at site, which is usually hospitals. So who is conducting clinical trial at site? There will be someone should be present who oversee the conduct of a clinical trial at site. So who is leading that? Every clinical trial which is led by an investigator at site. Who is that? The one who is conducting the clinical trial at site, which is known as investigator. So these investigator will be a medically qualified doctor. Only a medically qualified doctor can conduct the clinical trial. Not like that any PhD person can be the investigator of the study. Medically qualified, trained, experienced doctor only can conduct clinical trial at site. So the leader of the clinical research team at site, who is known as principal investigator, in short form PI, principal investigator, PI. So usually for assisting this PI, there will be a supporting team at the site. For example, sub investigator or co investigator, clinical research coordinators, pharmacist, lab persons, nurses, technicians, etc., who is usually helping the investigator, principal investigator, to perform the clinical trial activities at the site. Usually, the principal investigator who will be appointing these team members into his study for conducting the study related activities. Now, let's see the term sponsor. Who is a sponsor? In clinical research, this term sponsor is very important. Mostly, these investigators who is conducting the study at the site, they are conducting the studies for these sponsors. So sponsor, it is an individual, institution, company or organization that takes the responsibility to initiate, manage or finance the clinical trial. These clinical trials, it can be sponsored or funded by pharmaceutical companies, academic medical centers, voluntary groups, and other organizations. So, physicians, healthcare providers, and other individuals can also sponsor the clinical trial. So, every clinical trial will be under a sponsor. They are monitoring, they are guiding, they are initiating, they are funding to conduct a clinical trial. So, this term will be very similar to you, which is Contract Research Organization or CRO. CRO, Contract Research Organization, which is also known as Clinical Research Organizations. Actually, they are offers the clinical trial and related services for the pharmaceutical drug development activities. Basically, they are acting as a vendors in the clinical trial. Vendors means the one who is supporting the another company to do any activities. So CRO is an vendor in the clinical trial. Usually, the sponsors, they are appointing the CRO to do the trial related activities for them. So whatever the sponsors responsibilities in the clinical trial, they have a huge responsibilities in the clinical trial. They will hand over to the CRO. Maybe they will fully give the responsibilities to the CRO on behalf of them, or they will give partially any responsibilities to them. So whatever the activities which is related to the clinical trial the CRO is conducting now, always this sponsor will oversee it. So basically sponsors, they are appointing the CRO to do the study related activities for them. Now let's see the point. Who gives the permission to conduct the clinical trial? It's not like that without any permission. We cannot conduct a clinical trial. So we need a proper approval from someone to perform the clinical trial. So who will give that? That is regulatory authority and IRB or IEC. Before starting a clinical trial activities, it's very important to get the approval for conducting a clinical trial. Every country, they will have the regulatory authority. So what is doing that? The sponsor, who is the applicant for the study, they will submit the applications to the corresponding country regulatory authority in which country they want to be conduct the clinical trial, and the regulatory authority will review the application, and if they are satisfied with the contents in the application, they will give the approval for the study. And simultaneously, the sponsor need to submit the application to the institutional review board or independent ethics committee through principal investigator which is associated with the site. So both these regulatory authority and IEC approvals are required before starting any subject recruitment activities, any subject related activities in the clinical trial. So without this approval, we cannot initiate the clinical trial activities. So that's about end of this video. I hope you understood some basics of the clinical research. We will see soon with an another interesting topics. If you like this, please like, share to your friends and subscribe. We will see you soon with the next topic. Thank you.